Dad, you taught me that the most important thing a father can leave to his kids is not what he leaves for them, but what he leaves in them. You operated heavy machinery by day and a tiny toothbrush by night. You lifted me up even higher than you could lift yourself. You told me stories of warriors and dragons, not to convince me that dragons were real, but to show me that evil can be overcome. You mastered the art of carrying a sleeping child, fixing little toys, and making the perfect sandwich. You showed me that you don't have to have superpowers to be a superhero. You knew that there is no quality time without quantity time. You cleaned up my messes, impersonated my favorite animals, and wiped away my tears. You understood that your greatest gift to our family was not your productivity, but your presence. You were focused, but interruptible, brave, but compassionate, strong, but gentle. Because there is nothing so strong as gentleness, and nothing so gentle as real strength. Thanks, Dad.
For Father's Day, and I just happened to think of this while that video was rolling. When we're recording this right now, it's Thursday. That means that it's Father's Day today, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the way through. I kind of like this new schedule. It works, doesn't it? This is great. But happy Father's Day to you wherever you are, whatever day of the week you might be viewing this. We're glad to have you with us. You may not know this about me, but in 2009, I won the lottery. It was sort of like the lottery. It was, in some ways, it was better than the lottery. In some ways, it maybe not quite as impressive. I was chosen along with 21 other pastors to spend 2 weeks, all expense paid trip to Israel. Now, that's the lottery, right? I mean, that's like a good gift. That was awesome. But I tell you what, it was absolutely amazing, and I know many of you have probably been there. But it was incredible to actually walk where Jesus walked. And to go down the Via Dolorosa, where we're on the way to the cross, to go and stand in those places and just take it all in. One of those places we went to was the Sermon on the Mount. It's called the Mount of the Beatitudes, but it was the Sermon on the Mount. And if this thing works at all, you'll be able to see a picture of that. Zoe, you might have to be our help in the back there. So this is actually a picture I took when I was there on the Mount. And when you're there, it's like it's this long slope. It's not a mountain. It's a long slope. It's more than a hill, less than a mountain, and it goes down all the way to the Sea of Galilee. That's the Sea of Galilee that you see in the back there. And at the bottom on the shore, there are date palms planted there. And so it's just this beautiful, beautiful scene. The air was crisp. The sun was hot, but not like Florida hot. It was more like a Mediterranean hot. It was just a beautiful scene. And as you look at it there and as you're standing there, you can just sort of speak and the words resound. It's a perfectly acoustic place. And so it's no wonder that Jesus went there to deliver the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 through 7. But think about this. Even in those great acoustics, Jesus had to really speak loudly because what he was saying was turning upside down everything that everyone had ever thought up until that time. For example, he said crazy stuff like, you think you ought to hate your enemy. I say, love your enemies and pray for them. And he said, you think you're missing out when you're being unpopular because people say all kinds of bad things about you because of me. But really, you're blessed. And other folks would say, you know, you think it's better to win at all costs. But I'm telling you, it's better to be a peacemaker. This was brand new, novel stuff that nobody had ever heard before. He was, as Tim Keller says, that he was turning the kingdom upside down and inside out. He was challenging all of their norms, all of their values, all of the things that they were saying, wait a minute, I thought success was winning. I thought that I had to get back. And so Jesus was pronouncing this in Matthew 5 through 7, and he wanted to make sure they heard it, because it was incredibly important that they hear the word as he was pronouncing it, as he was proclaiming it. And then for the rest of his sermon there, he goes through the Beatitudes, and then he gives us so much more teaching on fasting and everything else. And then he kind of closes the sermon with some illustrations. And he gives an illustration about how there's a wide gate and how there's a narrow gate. And the wide gate is easy to find. Lots of people are on that. But the narrow gate, where he is a lot harder to find. And then he tells about a good tree that bears good fruit. And then he says, obviously, a bad tree is going to bear bad fruit. And then he tells this story about two dads. Two dads that want to build a home for their family. Two dads that have a desire to make something that lasts. My first job call, my first ministry call out of seminary in South Carolina was to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I had arguably the longest job title of anyone you've ever met. You ready for this? I was the Presbyterian campus minister at the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. That's a lot to put on a business card. Loved it. It was a fabulous, fabulous time in life. And one of the reasons was we got every Sunday off. But in honesty, I think I've had just about every Sunday off since I've been here. So that's kind of a perk. But the other thing that was so great about it, so many great things about it, just being in that time of life with students, I did a lot of weddings. In fact, when we packed up our records to move from Chattanooga to Memphis, I had to tell the county how many weddings I have done. Over 400 weddings over the course of 7 years. Always doing weddings, and I loved it because there's something so great about doing a wedding. We married old people and young people and students and black people and white people. They were just coming to get married, and every one of those couples had one thing in common. You know what it was? None of them got married just to get divorced. None of them came to me and said, hey, would you marry us this week, and in a couple of 3 weeks, we'll probably get divorced. None of them came with that understanding. Every one of them came expecting to be married for a long, long, long time. Every one of them wanted to build a house. Every one of them wanted to be successful in whatever they were doing. And so this message tonight is for dads who have young children. Because I'm hoping and praying that the Word of God will wash into you and you'll start building a foundation for your children. This is a message for dads who've got older children, because it's never too late to speak life into the life of your children. And really, this is a message for all of us, because all of us are seeking to build something, and we want that something to be successful. So let's kind of dive into it here. This is what Jesus says in Matthew 7. He gives this illustration. Remember, he's just taught all of this earth-shattering word. He's just taught all of these things that nobody had ever heard before. He just flipped all of their common understanding upside down. And he says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, the ones that he's just the Beatitudes, and puts them into practice, is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the waters rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. Now, if you grew up in Bible school at all, I bet you we could do a sing-along here, and you can definitely do it at home. Everybody remember this one? The wise man built his house. Everybody do the hand motions. We can do this. And built his house upon the rock. Speed it up. Wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rains came tumbling down. Remember that? What about the foolish man? Remember that? The foolish man built his house upon the sand. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. See, Jesus is saying there's two guys here. And these two guys are after the same thing. In fact, there's a lot of similarities behind these guys. They both want to build a house. They both want to build something in their life. They want to build a house. They want to build a place for their family to be. They also had similar teaching. In fact, it wouldn't be too obtuse to say that I bet you that they were both sitting there on the side of the hill when Jesus was teaching this. And one of them might have been razor focused and the other might have been watching birds go by or been a little bit distracted along the way. They both had the same teaching. They both had access to the same information. They both had what Jesus was saying there. And both men lived in the same neighborhood. They were neighbors. You know how we know that? Because the same storm affected both of them. I like the way that Stephen Brown, a pastor over in Orlando, says it this way. He says, God doesn't give Christians different problems, just a different solution. You know, as we look around in our country today, as we look at the COVID pandemic, it affects Christians and non-Christians, doesn't it? As we look at the racial tension and all the things that are going on there, it affects Christians and non-Christians. As we think about the economic woes that might be on the horizon, it's going to affect non-Christians and Christians just the same. We face the same issues. We face the same storms. Christians just have a different solution, a different place. And that's why Jesus said, that is a wise man. Because storms are going to come. In this world, you will have trouble, Jesus promises. Storms are going to come. But what reveals is, what's the foundation? What's the foundation? The wise man hears the word. The fool, not so much. So I was going to put a picture up of this hotel that's over in Hollywood, Florida. And can you believe it? There's a 66-story hotel that's shaped like a guitar. Whoa! Isn't that incredible? I was going to put the picture up, but it's a casino, and I didn't think that would be really right. But it's just over in Hollywood. I am so looking forward to going over there and seeing it. Somebody last service said, I drove by, I saw it, I got pictures of it. It is so cool. But what I did find and what I did want to share with you is the way that they built that thing. 66 stories tall, shaped like a guitar, right? But what you don't see is that 8 stories below those 66 stories is the foundation. They dug and they dug and they dug, and when they thought they had gotten it enough, they dug some more because, listen, the higher the building, the depth and the quality of the foundation will determine the height of the building. The deeper you dig that foundation, the taller you can build that building. If they would have built that 66-story hotel on the same foundation that we would build a 1-story house on, it would crush it and topple over. But the depth of foundation, you can tell how tall this building is going to be by how much they dig deeper and deeper. Jesus says, if you want to build your house and you want your house to be successful and it's going to stand up in the storms, dig deep. Dig deep into that. Now, what's funny is as you hear this, we kind of hear it from our own mindset, you know. I don't know if very many of us here are contractors or anything else. When we think about building a house, we think in terms of payments, right? We don't think about going out and actually doing it. Those folks would have all understood exactly what Jesus was saying. And so when he says there's a wise man, he builds on the rock, and there's this foolish man over here, he builds on the sand, okay? What they would have been pictured in their mind is what they call in Israel a wadi. Now, a wadi is where 2 mountains come together, and there's this valley there that's actually a stream. It's like a creek bed, but it's dry most of the time. But just think about this. Whenever it rains, all the rain that's on those mountains come down, and it acts almost like a gutter. And so anything that's in that wadi doesn't just get destroyed. It gets decimated. There is nothing left of whatever was in the middle of that wadi. So when Jesus says there's a foolish man and he builds his house on the sand, they're picturing that wadi. And they're like, you know what? I can see why he would do that. Because all the sand is right there. He doesn't have to move it anywhere. It's so easy to make it level in there. And it makes it so easy to just put up a house and walk away and say, great, I built my house. But in the bottom of that wadi, when the rain comes, it destroys everything in its path, so much so that it's like it never even existed. That's what Jesus is saying. He's saying you can build your house on the firm foundation of the rock, or you can be a foolish man and build it in the bottom of a wadi. See, your foundation determines your future. Your foundation, the depth of the foundation, what you're building on, determines the success of your future. He goes on from there. Sinclair Ferguson says it this way. He says, everyone lives in a way that makes sense to them. Even the guy that was going to build on the sand, if you were to go to him and say, you know what, that's not going to work out so well for you. He's going to say, no, I'm going to do this, because he's going to do it on purpose. Everything we do makes sense to us at the time. Nobody says, this is really stupid, but I'm going to really do it anyway. Maybe somebody does, but nobody in this room and nobody online. We're smarter than that. Everyone lives in a way that makes sense to them. We unconsciously believe that certain things are true. We unconsciously believe that there are certain things that are true, and therefore they're trustworthy, and therefore they're foundational, and therefore we can build on them. We need to ask ourselves, and our influences though, what is true? As a dad, as a believer, as a human, as a citizen, we need to ask ourselves, what is true? So years ago, I was in Florence, Italy, and we had a day off. I was over there playing some music, and we had a day off, and some of the band went down into the city of Florence, and 2 or 3 of us said, I want to go to Pisa. I want to go to Pisa and check out Pisa. I've always heard of Pisa. And so we got in our guide took us over there, and he was kind of showing us around, and we got to the town, and guess what is in Pisa? There's one thing in Pisa. There's a tower that does this. We drove about 90 minutes to go look at a tower that does this. Actually, there's 2 things in Pisa. There's a tower that does this, and there's people that sell little statues of a tower that does this. That's all there is, you know. And so you're there, and you're looking at this, and you're like, why does it do this? I asked our guide. I said, why does it do this? And he said, oh, it's because it's in Pisa. It's the Leaning Tower of Pisa because it's in Pisa, but it leans because it's in Pisa. I said, I lost you. What do you mean by that? He says, Pisa means marshy. Pisa means swampy. The reason the tower leans is because it was built on a mushy foundation. We've got so many folks in our neighborhood, so many folks around us that are trying to build a house on a mushy foundation. And they're trying to get the picture to hang straight on a wall that's leaning over, and trying to fix windows and doors that won't open anymore because the whole foundation is crumbling. That's a foolish man, according to Jesus. He says, you can build your house on the sand with no foundation at all, and when those storms come, and they are going to come, your house is not going to stand. Or you can do the hard work. You can do the blessed work. You can do the deep work of building on the foundation of truth. Sinclair, in the rest of that quote, said it this way. Where is it? We'll come to that in a moment. You know what the difference between wisdom is? Wisdom is the difference between human opinion and divine revelation that you act upon. Remember what Jesus said? He said, these men who hear my word and put it into practice. There's a lot of folks who hear the word but don't put it into practice. That is not wisdom. The difference is between meology and theology. Meology says, I think that makes sense to me. There's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to destruction. Or theology says, what's God's view on this? What does God think about this? The wise man listened and applied what Jesus said. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he's going to make your path straight. Tim Keller says it this way, and I love this. He says, there's a fundamental difference between agreement and obedience. You see, agreement says, I'll do it if it makes sense to me. Obedience says, I'll do it even if it doesn't make sense to me. That is a fundamental difference there. That's what it means to build on that foundation. The wise man listened and applied to what Jesus said. The rest of this Sinclair Ferguson quote is so poignant. He says, everyone lives in a way that makes sense to them. We unconsciously believe that certain things are true. we need to ask ourselves and our influences, what is true? Just as Pilate asked Jesus before he was crucified. He said, what is truth? And Jesus said this, you're right in saying that I am a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world to testify to the what? Truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Do you need a filter for truth? It's going to be on Jesus' side, period. John 17, in the great priestly prayer Jesus prayed in the garden, he said, sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. If you're looking for the foundation to build upon, you must go to the Word. His Word is truth. That is the foundation that he's talking about there. Well, it either works or it doesn't. So the differences continue, though. One house stood in the storm, and the other one fell in the storm. It was the storm that told the story. Just driving by from the outside, they would look so similar. They might be a different color or something else, but the two houses look side by side. You would think, that's the same. But when the storm hit, in fact, it talks about it in the Bible. It says, the rain came down, the floods came up, and the wind howled. We're from Florida. We know what that is. That's a hurricane, isn't it? That's a hurricane. And when the hurricane came, guess what? When the hurricane came, it was too late to go to Home Depot to board up the windows. When the hurricane came, all of those things that were around the house and around the neighborhood started flying around. Everything that wasn't tied down. We just bought a house here in Florida, and in our insurance policy, it said we're protected against missiles. And I said, from Russia or China or what? He said, no. In a storm, anything in the yard becomes a missile. The storm is where the foundation shines. The storm is where the lack of the foundation falls apart. Life will bring us storms. Life will bring your neighbors storms. Life will bring the people that you love in your life storms. Life may even bring your children storms. Life may bring people in your family storms. Dads, how are you leading? How are you building that foundation into your children so that when the storm hits, they will stand? Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. What influences our worldview? What influences the narrative that we write with the facts that we get? Everyone on the side of Jesus listens to him. Your word is truth. The foundation of your word is truth. So my boys are getting older now, but at a time they were both 5 years old, and it was Christmas. And I love my sister-in-law to death. I absolutely love her. But one year she gave both of the boys these great big Hot Wheels. Big wheels. But they weren't the little plastic big wheels that you pull out of the box and stick on the ground. These were like 10-speed big wheels. You know, you open up the box and there's an owner's manual like this thick on how to put this thing together. And I'm looking at that and I'm looking at this and I'm like, how hard could it be? I'm a male after all. We figure stuff out, right? So I'm out there trying to put this big wheel together, and I'm out there about maybe 2 hours or so. And Gina, I love her, my wife. I love her. I love my wife. She's wonderful. She comes out and she looks in the garage where I'm out there just sweating and working away, and she says, that doesn't look like the box. And I'm like, you think? And she said, have you thought about reading the owner's manual? I'm like, that's a great idea. That was a novel. I had not even considered that. The Bible is like the owner's manual from Jesus Christ himself, the author of truth. Colossians 1 says it this way, everything was made for him, by him, and for his good pleasure, and that includes you, and that includes me. That includes your children. That includes the ones that you want to have influence over. Have you consulted the manual? Are you building your home? Are you building your house on the foundation of truth of Jesus Christ. I love the way William Law, he was a 16th century Presbyterian minister in England. And he said it this way. He said, if you have not chosen the kingdom of God first, it will in the end make no difference what you have chosen instead. In other words, if you're not building on the foundation of Jesus Christ, you could build on good things, you could build on addictions. It doesn't really matter. That's harsh. And that's the way C.S. Lewis said it this way. He said, does it matter to a man dying in the desert by which path he misses the only well? Jesus says there was a wise man and there was a foolish man. The wise man built his house on the firm foundation of Jesus Christ. The one who heard my word and actually did it. But the foolish man heard my word and just said, next. Next. The firm foundation. You know, those storms in the Bible talk about, there's a good bit of talk about storms. Because storms, especially in that day, was a way for Jesus to show that he was the God of everything. In Mark 4, there's this story about these same guys that would have heard what Jesus had just taught, about these same guys that had traveled with Jesus and seen him do miraculous things, turning water into wine and raising people and healing people and doing all of these things. And they get in a boat one day. Jesus says, let's go to the other side of the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. You ever felt like Jesus was sleeping when you're in a problem? Well, you're not the first one, right? But look what happens. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Look at how their circumstances controlled their theology. Look at the way that they were seeing this one situation and going, regardless of everything else that you've ever done, are you going to let us drown? That's why Jesus got up, and look at this. He rebuked the wind, and he said to the waves, "Peace, be still." He didn't say, "Storm, be still." He said, "Peace, be still." And immediately the wind died down and it was completely calm. There are times when Jesus will speak, "Peace, be still," into your storm. And the storm may still be raging outside. The storm may still be coming at you and still hitting you, but you have a peace. A peace that passes understanding, because Jesus has spoken into your storm and he has said, "Peace, peace, be still." He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were even more terrified, though, and asked each other, "Who is this guy? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now think about this. Many years later, these same guys are going to be called upon to be martyred. These same guys are going to be called upon to testify for him. These same guys are going to be filled by his Holy Spirit and preaching the gospel. Do you think they're going to be able to look back on that storm and say, if Jesus got us through that, Jesus can get us through anything? You see, that's the foundation. In your life, as you look back and as you pass on your story, your testimony on to your children, what are the storms that you're going to be able to say, you know what? Jesus spoke into that and said, "Peace, be still." Those are the things that become part of the narrative. Those are the things that become part of the worldview. As you step back, you go, wow, peace, be still. In fact, let me show you this in Isaiah chapter 26. Isaiah chapter 26. It's coming, I know it is. You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. Whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. That's what it means to build your house on the firm foundation of truth. It's what it means to pour into that foundation. And so I would ask you tonight, what are you doing to build that foundation into your life? Are you setting the kind of disciplines, kind of habits in the house that draw all of those in there to a deeper relationship with Jesus? Are you memorizing Scripture? Are you leading in prayer? Are you making decisions based on the Word? Years ago, we started a church in Tampa, Florida. I've told you a little bit about it. And one day we thought this will be great. So we gathered our core group, the people that start the church with you. We gathered our core group, and we took them fishing down to Sarasota. And so we got down to Sarasota, and we put everybody on the boat, and everybody's having a great old time. And we head out of Sarasota Harbor, and in front of us there is just a wall of black clouds. It's September in Florida. Everybody know what I'm talking about, right? And we see this wall coming at us, and we keep going towards it, and it's like, wait a minute, shouldn't we be going the other way? I mean, I'm not a sailor, but it makes sense to me that if there's a storm coming, you want to go the other way. So I go up to the captain, and I say, have you seen what's ahead of us? And he said, yes, sir, don't worry about it. I said, don't worry about it? What are you talking about? That's a storm, and it's like from the horizon down to the water. That's a big storm. And he said, sir, we've got this under control. I said, don't you think we ought to go back? And he said, you didn't come out here to go back. I was like, well, maybe I did now. You know, that was before the storm. And so we keep motoring to the storm. He said, just go downstairs and trust. Just trust me. So we go there, and man, we hit that storm. And for probably 10 to 15 minutes, it was like lightning coming down and waves, and we're rocking all over the place. And I was like, whoa, this is terrible. And I'm getting worried because I'm worried that this boat's going to capsize, and I'm going to lose my core group and have to build another one. But we went through the storm. We got onto the other side. It was peaceful on the other side of the storm. We fished. We didn't catch anything. We went back. And when we got back to the harbor, I went up to the captain. I said, I'm sorry that I busted you about that, but why didn't we go back? And he said, sir, this boat was made with this storm in mind. If we would have gone back, we would have been beaten against the dock, and we would have really been in trouble. But this boat was designed with that storm in mind. You were in the safest place you could have possibly been in that boat going through that storm. Listen, folks, the Bible, God's holy word, it was designed with your storm in mind. It was designed with your storm in mind, and it is the best place. It is the only place. It is the foundational place to find truth. And so I've got two questions for you tonight. The first question is, who are you listening to? When you get your truth, when you get your understanding, when you build your worldview, when you create your narrative, who are you listening to? Are you listening to truth? Are you listening to someone who is not coming from the side of truth? Who are you listening to? And then the second question is, how's your foundation? Is your foundation getting deeper and deeper and thicker and thicker? I guess that sort of begs the third question. Do you know truth? Pilate said, what is truth? Jesus said, I am truth. Do you know him? You may be here tonight or watching online and say, I think I'm more like the foolish guy. I know a lot about him, but I don't know that I'm actually doing what he says. And if that's you tonight, I want to tell you, you can simply say, Jesus, I want to follow you. I want to build my life on you. I want to turn from all of these other things that have been pulling me off, and I just want to walk wholeheartedly and completely with you. Would you accept me? You see, what's so hard is that as dads, as believers, as Christians in this world, listen, we cannot lead someone where we're not going. We can't lead someone to truth unless we are leading them there to truth. We can introduce them to truth, but we can't lead them. We can't build their foundation. Eddie's a great pastor, a great preacher. This is an excellent church, but we can't build your foundation for you. We can give you the tools, we can give you the information, but it's really up to you and your relationship with Christ to build on that truth. And so I just want to challenge you. I just want to challenge you and say, God, what am I building my life on? If there's anything in here, David said it this way, if there's any, search me and try me. See if there's any way in me that is not right. That's a dangerous but an effective prayer. I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you tonight. Make sure you're on the truth and make sure you're growing in the depth of that truth. Let's pray together. Gracious